Anyway, we are here with another episode of the I Show Up As I Am that I created so I could have guests speaking with me about their stories of what led them to show up more as who they are in their life. And we usually pick a specific topic that it has a lot of relevance for the guest and me, and that we think is going to be such a great contribution for you. And today we have Kate Young here with us. She's absolutely incredible. She's a friend. I consider Katie a friend. We met in a business group, and since the first time we connected, that we spoke for like 2 hours and a half when it was supposed to be 20 minutes, but it never really is. But anyway, since the first conversation we had, that we discussed a lot of these topics, and there's so much wisdom that was coming out of it that when we had our second conversation, we thought maybe we could do this live with you and have you also share with us your own perspective on the subject, the voice in your head. And Katie today is going to also have a very special announcement for you, and her brand is called Divine Royalty. Katie not only helps, people in person and online now as well, right, Katie?
Yes.
But she also does these amazing candles that I've seen in her website. I have my eye on them. I really want to buy them. And I also love Katie's hair. She's like, we are both curly hair.
Girly girls. I don't know if you, I'm changing it very quickly. I don't know if you saw I put that post up on my story the other day. Never brush a curly girl's hair.
Oh my God, that's like a lion.
Anyway, I digress.
Anyway, I love your work, and I love you talking about, soul and, connection with spirit. And also when you talk about grief and everything that you've learned, and it's just your presence in this world and all the wisdom that you've acquired. When I hear you speaking, it's just really inspiring to me, and I feel like I can connect with you at a deep level because of that. And there's so much acceptance and reassurance when you speak and when you hear. You're a very good listener as well. And so I was so excited to have you here today and have my audience benefit from all your wisdom and your contribution. And Stella is here with us already.
Oh, hi, Stella.
Hi, ladies. So great to see you both. So great to see you, have you with us here, Stella. Stella is also part of the same business group. So Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. Amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me on to your platform. It's an honour, and so many compliments there, and all of them returned right at you. And one of the things we said, which was really nice, was that we could have this discussion, and we have different kind of perspectives on different things. We've had different life experiences, and one thing we shared, which I think is important for everybody in every walk of life, that neither of us are right and neither of us are wrong. We're both open to hearing the other person's perspective and absorbing that and allowing that to sit as well, because obviously sometimes that helps us to expand our understanding. So it's this beautiful mutual kind of respect that we hold, and open-hearted communication, which is really special. So I'm very grateful for that. So yeah, what an introduction. But yes, I'm the founder of Divine Royalty, and that is my business, which has been formed. The name and what I do now online has come on over the last 18 months. Prior to that, I've spent the last 25 years working really face-to-face with clients in various different locations. I've worked in medical practice, I've worked private practice for myself, but the reason this subject in particular is something that I'm really passionate about and we can really connect on, is that the voice in your head that we're going to talk about today, and it's what I kind of use as my tagline, helping you to be free of the voice, or at least quieten it. It's so important, because how I got into what I do and have worked with so many people over so many years was because I found myself one day, I was sat on the end of my bed, and I heard this voice, and just in this moment everything went really still. And I think some people can relate to this. If it's a moment of crisis or something really traumatic is happening, everything that distracts us usually just drops away, and this kind of silence appears. Even if everything is going on around us, there's this inner silence, something grabs us to a deeper level because we have to be present. And I had this stillness appear, and as I was sat on the end of my bed, I heard this voice, and I didn't know where it came from. It wasn't that usual rambling on voice in my head that went on and on with that distraction all the time. It was something different, and it was much quieter. But because everything went still, I could hear it. And it was a very quiet, very certain, very reassuring, wise voice. And the words that were spoken basically changed my life forever. And those words were, that came from this quiet voice: it's your time to step up or leave. And in that moment, everything changed, because I'd been unwell for a long time, mentally unwell, physically unwell. But, you know, all of that stemmed from me not hearing that voice and not listening to that voice. And so I can say with a lot of confidence that when you don't listen to that voice, it's so important, it can get you in a whole lot of trouble. So there I was in this moment. And that step up or leave moment, when I heard that voice, it wasn't saying to me, you know, leave the room. This was my choice point. I'd come to that ultimate choice point. Either I step up and take responsibility and step into something else, or I leave my life. That was it. So in that moment, you do go through that stage of reviewing so much of your life, and that's what I did. But it happened in seconds, literally in seconds. And when I thought about it, I thought, you know, if I go now, what will I have sort of achieved? Would I have lived my life well? And the ultimate question was, if I leave now, will I be able to smile and say I live life really, really well? And in that moment, it was a no. I couldn't say that I'd done that. And the reason for that was because I've been living according to everybody else's expectations. I've been living according to the box that I should fit in, that society provides for us. You know, these are your choices, choose one, crack on, and don't make too much noise, and just go down that route. And I'd had this nagging feeling, and, you know, it started with things like a bit of anxiety and just feeling like I should be happy, but I wasn't. There was just something on the outside. I looked great. Everything looked great but in the inside, it was a different story. Just little niggly health problems. And then over time, these things just expanded because I just wasn't listening. And the voice in my head, I'm sure people can relate to this. It got to this point where I was, for example, watching a TV program or something. And if someone had said to me, what was that program about? I couldn't have told them, because I was sitting there looking very serene, watching the TV, for instance. But the whole time, the voice was going all the time. So in that moment of step up or leave, I then heard another voice, because when I realized that I hadn't lived my life, and I couldn't say when my life came to an end, I'd lived it really well. And life is precious. It's such a precious gift. And it's this noise that just stops us from being connected to how precious that is. And the next thing that I heard in this quiet voice saying to me was, it's not your time. It's not your time. And obviously that was a relief. And the next thing it said to me is, it's not your time, but you have to stand in your power. And I thought, oh, thank God. thank God. But then I thought, geez, what does that mean? I don't know what stand in your powers. I have no idea, you know. I had no conception of what that was. I didn't even know I had my own power. You know, I had no background in anything to do with any spiritual stuff, personal, nothing at all. You know, I've been working in marketing for the last, don't know how long. So I was very excited that I wasn't going to have to go anywhere. But on the other hand, I didn't know what I was going to do. But there was something that when I made that decision, there was something inside me that I knew it was going to be okay. I had no idea how, but I knew it was going to be okay. And just to kind of really summarize from that point, my life changed because I made this decision that whatever that voice was, whatever part of me had spoken to me in that moment, I needed to understand more. And I didn't want other people, not, you know, it's not that everybody's going to get to the point that I did where I had to make a decision to save my life. I just don't want people to half live. So many people now have anxiety, depression, you know, they feel like something's missing, they feel like there's something more to life. And I wanted other people not to have to feel that, to actually embrace this precious life that we have. And everything did show up. From the moment I started to trust that voice, everything showed up. My first thing was I trained as a nutritional consultant. The course dropped in my lap, the funds appeared, everything appeared that I needed to. I qualified as a nutritional consultant, not only qualified, but I healed my physical body in the process. But then that sent me on a mission to decide to understand the mental and emotional side of us. I didn't want half the picture. I'd worked out how to heal the body physically, but I knew there was more to this. So I was on a mission to understand the mental and emotional side of things that we all suffer from. You know, we all have these ups and downs and things that affect us emotionally. We have a roller coaster of emotions. So that was my next mission. And I just went on to study and qualify in an array of different subjects and therapies, and researched, left no stone unturned. But that point, I just realized that actually this part of us, this voice in our head, there is so much more to this. And I made a declaration to understand the bigger picture of things for us, because we've become so absorbed by our human self only. And that's where we place our identity. But there is so much of our story that we have forgotten. And that then brings us this insecurity. So when I made this declaration to find out the bigger understanding of who we are, I thought it was all going to be kind of like, you know, roses and rainbows and answers, you know, just falling in my lap. Actually, that was just a hilarious conclusion. But I made such a definite declaration. And from that point actually onwards, I thought things were pretty rocky before. Things got even more rocky. But I had anchored in enough this part of me, which is not that rambling voice in my head. It is the true guidance, the truth of who I am. I'd anchored it in enough to keep me stable and keep me unshakable through what was about to come. And there was so many different things I mentioned to you before. I lost my dad in really difficult circumstances, really horrific circumstances. It was down to other people's mistakes. He suffered terribly. But those instances and that situation, for instance, I could have gone and been very angry. I could have blamed the world. You know, those are the immediate reaction and emotions that come up from the ego in your head. They did it, it's their fault, you know, it's the world's fault. How can they? But I quickly realized this would affect me for the rest of my life and have a knock-on effect to my family. So what I found was when I made that declaration, these events keep coming at me. But what they were showing me and what they were encouraging me to do was to dig and go under that immediate knee-jerk reaction that the ego goes. Because of course the ego straight away will look for the bad in it. It will look while you're look at why you're the victim, why you can't forgive, what, because that's what we're programmed to do. That's what we've just been hearing all the time, you know, is operating from that ego voice. But underneath that ego voice, there's a whole world of something so graceful and so beautiful and so untouchable. And that is that true part of you and our connection to everything. So for instance, with my dad and what happened there, he was just my hero. I adored him. Just, I can't even put into words. So seeing him suffer was horrific. But what that gift was that he gave me was he taught me one of the biggest things, I think, is forgiveness. And that's what I found underneath all those emotions. From my dad, I went on, and then I know we've discussed, but my mum, because of the terrible things my dad had gone through, she couldn't cope with life anymore, and she became very, very mentally ill, severely mentally ill. And I lived with that, with two little children under the age of 3, who are now, a lot older, but for 13 years. And again, what I learned from that, I mean, the stories and what I could share are, on one hand, just so fascinating and interesting and incredible and sometimes unbelievable, but that's for another time. But to say, living with someone and being solely responsible for someone with such severe mental illness, there were times when I was literally in the corner rocking because I just thought, I can't do this anymore. There was times when I felt it was so difficult because I was missing so much of my children's lives because I was completely absorbed by this mental illness because there was no one else to care for. However, in every stage of this mental illness and the things that I went through, again, those immediate emotional reactions are always negative. But what it was showing me was let's look under that, let's go under that, let's find what lives there. Because when you can release all of those negative emotions, anger, but whatever it is, those immediate knee-jerk reactions, there is something so beautiful that lives under that. And I find all our life challenges that we come up against, all they are just things that are coming into you. So you can try to help you to find something other than that automatic reaction, to find what lives under that part of you that is divine royalty, that is connected to everything. And so my life kind of went on, and I that learning curve, which I thought was going to be all roses and flowers and rainbows, that was a good 15-year learning curve of kind of relentless, stuff coming at me. But then I realized that this stuff coming at me it's only how I assess it and how I judge it, and whether I go to the voice in my head or I go to the wisdom in my heart as to what I will get out of that. But ultimately, all of this comes back to one really interesting conversation that I think is really, really important that we start to have. We've had, people have got really good at having conversations about things that have been swept under the carpet. But what's really interesting is that one of the most important conversations we need to have now as a society, as communities, as family, globally, is to ask those really, really important questions, which I've spent 25 years personally trying to uncovering, researching, walking the walk, walking with clients. And that is, who are we? Who are we really? Not just this voice in the head. Who are we apart from this physical body? Because clearly operating just from this, it's not working. We look at it's not working. We don't feel amazing. We don't feel like we're free and every day is joyous. And that's actually not just a fairy tale. It's kind of how it is meant to be. We're programmed to do that. So, who are we? Why are we here? I mean, these questions are so, why are we here? They seem so obvious, but we've been avoiding them for so long. Why are we here? Who are we? Why are we here? What on earth is going on? What is this life all about? And where are we going next? Especially with that question, going through a lot of different grief things. I've learned a lot from that side of things. And the death and the way we look at it, it's an illusion of our times. Death is not real, and scientifically it's proven it's not real anymore. But those questions are, I think, the fundamental foundation of rebuilding who we are, our certainty, our confidence, our world, rebuilding globally who we are. So that's a really long answer to one question right there. But it's just trying to give you some insight into what's gone on and who I am behind, what I do. And obviously one of the greatest teachers for me, apart from my own personal learnings and the research, is working with the incredible people I have over the last 25 years. So many amazing people, so through so many different journeys. they teach me a lot. It's incredible, and that's what we're here for. You know, we can all share and help each other and learn from each other.
That's incredible. I even muted myself because I didn't want any noise to come in between these. And there's so many things I want to say. And one of them is how courageous and difficult it is to choose to go underneath those layers.
Mm.
You know, when you are anxiety or in a loop of those emotions that are sometimes difficult to feel, and you choose to go underneath those layers, underneath that voice in your head. That requires so much presence and awareness to even being able to choose that. You know, and you doing that, and I can relate with that moment where you first realize that there's something else there, something there for you, and also the moments where those questions start to come up. And I find that those questions are like a portal to infinite possibilities, because as soon as you ask the question, the universe is like, oh, here you go. There you go. Oh, she asked this. Let me just tell her who she is, what she's doing here. And as soon as we give that permission and allow that to show up, suddenly we are open to receive and see, because it's not like it wasn't there before. We were just not open to receive that. So those questions are questions I also ask myself, and I can think of 2 big times in my life, and in both of those times I was in deep despair.
And that's the time, isn't it? In that despair, you get this stillness, and all of a sudden everything that you think is important, it just drops away because it's not.
It's like you are on your knees. It's like that deep surrender of, I actually have no clue anymore. I give up. And you get so tired of trying to find out and figure it out. And you're just like, I just want to open space and let whatever it is come to me, because clearly what I'm trying is, that's what you said, it's not working anymore. And I had that too. And in fact, that's how also what I'm doing now showed up for me. It was when I started asking those questions. The same thing when I was in engineering as a student, and I was crying every year. I was unhappy. I was doing the path that I was told was the best path to take, and I chose to comply to that.
And how many of us do that, you know? How many of us, you know?
But as soon as I asked the question, and I gave up. I gave up trying to know. Makeup showed up in my life out of the blue, and I had never known or used, you know, a lipstick, a mascara, or whatever it was. And so for makeup to show up, it was like, it was a gift. It was the light at the end of the tunnel that took me to a different country, following my dreams, becoming a makeup artist, and in that space retrieving more of me. But that was not the final destination. It never is really the final destination. And I think we'll keep asking these questions and going deeper and deeper and deeper into that core of who we are. And we are always unraveling. But if I hadn't asked the question, if I didn't dare to ask and want to know, I would be allowed to choose the same path and perhaps be unhappy. And I didn't know where that would lead me, because every day was quite sad, actually. I felt numb. That's what I want to say. I didn't know what feeling happy actually meant until I started dancing salsa, for example, and something ignited within me that I couldn't ignore anymore. And so I realized, okay, so everything I've been doing is actually not what I want my life to be.
And do you find that, I think as well, that when you go through those sorts of things, like you said about the salsa, and all of a sudden something lit up, and it's almost like a shock, because you don't, up to that point, you didn't realize you could feel that way, because life just keeps doing what it does, and you're part
Exactly.
of that kind of reoccurring thing that keeps happening every day. And it's, you think all of a sudden, whoa, you actually feel really happy, and something lights up inside you. And that actually can apply to every area of your life, because that's how we're meant to be. But that's when you're living from something other than that voice in your head.
Exactly. And it's very interesting when you mention, that voice in your head, because sometimes I know that it, especially in the beginning and until you understand this more deeply and how the different voices sound and like the feeling that you have when you hear them, is that people struggle with distinguish between the two. What is the fear, what is the anxiety, and what's actually your inner guidance. And everything, there's so much noise, as you said, that people have that difficulty in understanding what is coming from intuition and what is coming from that fear and anxiety. What would be your advice in that case, from your experience? How do you distinguish between the voice in your head and that one?
I think what I would say is, actually relating to that question and all the other questions we've just spoken about, it's not complicated. And I think that, again, the voice in your head can make everything complicated. How can I decide which voice is which? How can I possibly, live like this? How can it already will start to creep in, and as you think about a question, but what I would say is it really is, it's not complicated, it's quite simple. And through my experience and working with clients, what we've always found is that actually, how does it feel? How do you feel? That's it. Because if you're about to do something or you're listening to something and you feel uncomfortable, there's it. It's uncomfortable. But obviously you can have situations where, for instance, if I was going to come on a live a little bit before, you're a little bit uncomfortable, how's it going to go, make sure everything's right. But that's a different uncomfortable. That's quite easier. I really want to do this. I'm so excited to speak to you, but I feel a little bit uncomfortable because, we're going out live. But that's, you can understand that. But it's actually, I would say, it's as simple as a feeling. It's just the feeling. Do you feel good? No, I don't. Yeah.
That's the thing. I think that in the realm of spirituality and healing modalities, a lot of times things are taught that overcomplicate things, as in you have to go into meditation outside yourself to be able to connect with this voice and the soul realm and your higher self. And it makes it look so complicated.
And overwhelming.
Right? And it's not. I remember my spiritual mentor, I thought I was in that space, right? Of it's so difficult. Like I have to go into these meditations and connect. And what if I'm not connected? And she just said, you just have to ask. I was like, really? I can just ask? And she's like, yeah, just literally close your eyes and ask for divine intelligence, the universe, however people may resonate with. Whatever the name is, doesn't matter. But just ask, connect with me now, and make it very clear when you do. And sometimes I like to add in your face, clear. And how does that feel in your body? And for some people, I've noticed there's interesting things like something in the ear. Some people feel something in their hands. Sometimes it's just a knowing. For me, I start smiling and there's this expansion that happens in the body. And I was like, okay, you're here. And it's not that it comes from outside, it's within me, but I'm just allowing it to expand and not being contracted by all the conditioning
Mm.
that I've accumulated.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a really important point you brought up as well, about how, you know, within the spiritual realm, that it you know, you got to learn how to connect to your higher self. You've got to learn how to get hold of the ego, you know, get rid of the ego, you know, and that's an unfair judgment for me, as far as that goes with ego. You know, there's so many different areas, and I think people can get so overwhelmed, and that's exactly what happens. Then the voice in your head jumps in and goes, oh well, oh god, that's way too much, I couldn't do it, I can't possibly, you know, I could. But it's one of the things that you know, is really important to understand. You don't have to be some guru, you don't have to be some holy person to have access to this stuff. It's really, really down to earth, and it's really simple. And like you say, all you've got to do is ask. And you know, you don't have to get to the point that I did or you did, you know, that's that dramatic. I mean, I got to that point because I know that I'm here to work with people. I didn't know it at the time, but you know, I know I'm here to share this information, this knowledge. But it's not complicated. And literally, if you, is there any area in your life that you're not happy with, or you're unsettled with, or you've got anxiety, or whatever it is, like you say, just ask. Literally ask from the heart, put it out there, and see how you feel with the options that maybe come in, or these things you think you might want to do or change or whatever. See how that feels and how that sits with you, because it really is, you know, it's as simple as that. But you know, the ego's got a bad rap, and you know, it's actually not the ogre that we've made it out to be, you know.
And there's two things that I wanted to add as well, is that we can start asking these questions, and it's important for people, and those of you who are here live and the ones who watch on replay, please know that this is not something that has to work like this. Sometimes it's because it's such a subtle awareness that it's okay if it takes a little bit. It's okay if when you ask for the first time and nothing really happens, you're like, does this actually work? That's actually part of it. Oh my God, so many times have I asked this question.
And we live so used to having answers immediately. You know, if we've got a headache, we take someone headache to go now. Like, just, you know, what, everything happens so quickly, and it's a learning curve to listen to something, you know, and it takes time. It's like training in you know, in a new subject or a new career or something. It's like starting from the beginning and training in something.
Exactly. And I think it's about remembering, because I don't think it's as much learning, is actually retrieving that ability that we have. Right? And also it's our capacity to hold that energy inside us. Because a lot of times I found that because my way of protecting myself was by wanting to become invisible and disappear, and so I would contract my energy. And the energy of soul is infinite, right? So for me to be able to hold that energy, I had to allow myself to be visible and be in my vulnerability. So there is learning here to be had, and a really good way to do this is to keep asking these questions bit by bit and allow the body on all levels to feel safe in holding this infinite space. Because this is when you start stepping into your fullest potential, into who you truly are, where you become magnetic, you're vulnerable, you're visible, you're potent. It's in your nature, in that energy, because that's actually who you truly are at the core, beyond the human experience. This is what carries along the way through each lifetime. But being able to hold that energy is to also be open to receive anything. And we have here Stella and Charlotte. Charlotte was saying that your story when you were speaking was very powerful and amazing. And Stella was also agreeing that life is to be lived and enjoyed when you were speaking. and that there's no such thing as final destination. We were talking about that healing journey, and that she also loves the salsa vibe. Me too. And yes, that the soul is infinite. And I think that's it. I remember having to go beat by beat because, for example, I associated the universal energy as a paternal energy. And so I had to heal and release so many beliefs and expectations of what would happen if I were to connect. Because for a long time, I felt like I would be punished. I would go into these meditations and I was afraid of going into that space. I didn't know why, but I was contracting and contracting and contracting. So there's this beautiful, gradual journey that, as long as you are choosing to remember who you are and reconnecting with your truth, that your ability to hold space for who you are, it comes in bit by bit. Sometimes it's more sudden, like it happened to you in that moment where suddenly everything went still and you heard the voice. For other people, it will happen differently.
Absolutely. And sometimes it is, it's just, it can be in all different ways that it shows up, for sure. But I just also, we were just talking about obviously the ego and the voice in the head, and just like I was just saying, we were saying, because I know you're sort of nodding, and it to say that the ego also, known as voice in your head, it does get a bad rap, but it gets people very much often can say, that your ego and you've got to get rid of it and do this and the other, but obviously it does have a function. But I think one of the things that with it is that when we don't have an understanding, and I think this is with everything in life, and what I experienced and how I ended up getting to my step up or leave moment, and also everything that I went through afterwards, which there was more than I said, but the reason we feel so out of control, and for me, anxiety and panic attacks and all those kinds of things that I experienced were purely because I was trying to live as a mixture of everybody else's beliefs that have been put on me. So I was trying to live as someone other than who I am, because I was a mishmash of everything I'd grown up with. And that makes you feel very insecure. And I was very insecure. I was very unconfident. I was very uncertain in my own abilities. And I think a lot of us grow up like that. But in the absence of our identity, and this goes also back to the questions: who are we? Why are we here? Where we're going next? Those questions there are so important. And again, they're uncomplicated. They're really uncomplicated once you start to learn about them. But they're so important because they are the roots of who we are. They are the core of who we are. And as we lost contact and lost understanding of the answers to those questions, we lost contact with ourselves. We lost contact with our soul. We lost contact with the truth of who we are. We lost contact with home. And all those parts of us are all part of what makes us feel secure. But also they give us our identity. And without an identity, we had no guidance. And without our guidance and our connection to home, we were left with nothing to guide us. And so in the absence of our true guidance, for me, this is my experience of working with all these clients, how I look at the ego is actually the ego just stepped up to fully parent us in the absence of our true guidance. So that ego obviously is actually designed as the fight or flight, the warning system. So because the ego is parenting us, it sees our world as somewhere scary, because it's designed to look for fear, it's designed to look for threat, it's designed to look for things that are going to make us uncomfortable, all those different things. And so we found ourselves in a really tricky situation, which is what I see running through my life story, and the clients that I work with is that, one, we lost our identity, and we also lost contact with home and our true guidance. So our ego stepped up very graciously to parent us in the absence of any other guidance. But obviously, without an identity and amnesia to who we are, the world is a scary place. And that ego also views the world as a scary place. So when you look out at a lot of the way our world is governed, it's very much about, over time, it's become very much about selfish acts, living and doing things without respect and reverence for the whole, thinking of oneself, not understanding the connection between everything, because without an identity, and we don't have significance, and without significance, we have to find it in the outside world because we've lost it within ourselves. And then when you now look out at the world, we look at a world which is really governed by ego and selfish acts, because we're trying to find our identity in a world that we'll never find it in. The only place we'll find our identity is back within here. So from those 2 points of view, if you combine amnesia to who we are, that's going to create massive feelings. You know, if you woke up with amnesia to who you are tomorrow, as you are now, you know, the things that you're going to have fear, you're going to have uncertainty, you're going to have insecurity, all those things that are created. And that you end up living without that connection to certainty and who you are. And those are the feelings that are generated. Combine that without our guidance, and we have the ego that stepped in to guide us, and that is the voice in your head. So whether you're going through a relationship breakup, for instance, you know, your ego will immediately go into what that person did wrong, how they wronged you, you know, whether all these things, but you will analyze it from a place of fear and from a place of needing to feel significant and feel safe and protecting yourself, rather than maybe a lesson that's underneath it, which I was talking about earlier. So, you know, with the ego, it just stepped up. It was there designed to protect us and to guide us from stopping us from burning our hand and being chased by a tiger. It was never there to guide us. It was never there to be our guru. And unfortunately, we view most of our life through the lens of that process. So in fact, you know, I think it's time to release that ego, you know, release. And that's what I talk about, you know, and what I do is free yourself from the voice in your head, because it's beautiful and it's there for a reason. It's there to help you in your physical environment, but not to guide you on your life purpose.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the ego stepping in to protect us, because that links a little bit to my perspective of the voice in your head, as I tend to look at it with work with the parts and, you know, sub-self, sub-personalities. And I usually see what you call the voice in your head. I think of it as the inner critic, or other energies like a pusher who gets you to do things, get you to complete the tasks you need to complete. But if you identify with it, you can just go overboard and become a workaholic. But I tend to look at the inner critic as a child, you know, who absorbed all these behaviors, all these beliefs from the environment in order to protect the whole system, just like you are saying. And so for me, even in my work with clients and in the masterclass, Fall in Love with Your Face, I bring that up so that it's not that we need to suppress or shut down the inner critic or the voice in your head. We actually get to befriend this voice and actually show up for it and reparent this voice, because ultimately it's not the child's job to be the adult and the protector. Now we get to do that, and we get to show up and show our support and allow that voice to relax that part of us to relax. And when it does, it goes into its true nature. And it can be an ally, and it has so many gifts. But it now learns that it doesn't have to use those mechanisms of protection that it had to use when we were vulnerable and didn't know any better. And vulnerable, I'm saying in a way where we actually needed outside support to survive, like when we were babies and little children. And now the concept of vulnerability is a different thing, because we bring in the wisdom, we bring our ability to also set boundaries. It's different. It's not the same thing at all, because we are capable of surviving. But I find that when we look at that voice as that child, then we also have compassion for what led to that voice and that criticism and all those stories. And we get to offer that healing and retrieve the gifts. And sometimes it bothers me when I see coaches or healers selling this as shut down your inner critic, shut down this voice, get rid of this, as if it was bad, making it bad, because ultimately they're making a part of themselves bad. And I think that just perpetuates the problem, because as long as there's suppression, you are still getting further from who you are. For me, the gift to deal with all of this is awareness. Is, as you said, knowing when is that voice, those parts that are concerned, that are still trying to step in. Because, I mean, you've been years doing that. So it's not like this, that everything is going to change and you're just connected with your higher self and your soul, and all the rest is going out the window. This is actually a gradual process. And sometimes you'll still criticize yourself. You'll still be in the position of fear. But can you look at yourself from a position of compassion? Because you know where it came from and you know what it's trying to do. And you know it's not necessarily your enemy, even though you become your worst enemy by identifying with that voice. But I think there's all this process of falling in love with that part that is beneficial to happen in order to move forward from a grounded place, an integrated place.
I agree, and I so you're saying with the different parts and things, and it's one thing that I learned along the way is, because people talk about self-sabotage and all these different things that they go through, and there is a lot of lack of self-care and self-love and all of that, but I think again it kind of goes back to, like you're saying, there's all these different parts, but it's all these different parts we've collected along the way, a lot of the time, obviously, from our upbringing, from society. And I know, you could say, oh, well, that's it. But it really is. But it's how we process them through the voice in the head as well. And then it makes it really difficult to, when we talk about self-love and compassion and loving yourself, one thing that I really found was the reason I found that so difficult, because I was trying to love something that wasn't me. It's like I just said earlier. I didn't know quite who I was. And it's not until you sort of start learning more about these questions that, we spoke about earlier, that you get to this point of just going, my God, this is so huge. This is so much bigger than me, as just me, as this human person that I think that's all I am. This is beyond, it's almost beyond comprehension sometimes, but in the most beautiful way. And then I think something starts to change when you start getting answers to some of these questions and understanding, and then you start to remember yourself. Actually, this feels, when we're talking about feeling things, you can read something, learn something, and you don't necessarily have to understand it from the logical mind. It just feels. You just know. And so, you know, I think with the self-love and the compassion and understanding and listening to yourself and all of those sorts of things, they come in time with understanding and reclaiming the magnificence of who you are. Because it's one of the things, you know, I write about a lot and speak about, is that ultimately you came from, as did I, as did anybody who listens to this, every person, you know, in human form came from the same source that created everything, came from creation itself, and therefore you are creation. There's no two ways about that at all. You know, we all came from the same source. So, you know, when we look at the magnitude of the universe, and again with the rush and the busyness and the voice in your head, you know, being able to slow just for a minute, even if you just look at the intricate nature of a leaf, you know, or you look at a cloud formation, or it's you know, we all share that same space. We're all part of the same thing. And the magnificence that we see, that, you know, that there's no end to the universe, there's no end to us. But when we look at ourselves as parts of our upbringing and what we've been programmed and the restrictions that have been put on us, you know, it makes us very difficult to expand and, you know, start to acknowledge, you know, the divine, amazing beings that we are. But when that little spark starts to happen, you start to embrace something else, and you see something else within yourself and within other people and within the world, and something magical start to happen. And those parts that, you know, anxiety, you know, for me, this is what I learned: panic attacks, anxiety, depression, feeling, you know, really insecure, lack of confidence. I just could go on, but the different feeling, and this feeling that there was something, I couldn't put my finger on it. I just knew there was something else, but I just didn't understand what. And also feeling like I should be happy and I just wasn't. All of those different feelings, they all come down to the fact that it all comes back down to feeling out of control, because we've lost that understanding, that knowing. It's not lost, it's there, but we just piled a load of stuff on top of it, you know, so we can't hear ourselves anymore. But with the answers to those questions, we just can build this solid foundation of knowing, of understanding our connection to everything and who we actually are, the whole of who we are. And with that comes certainty, because with that comes an understanding that you are so much more. And actually, the more you get to understand and know that, the more in control you feel. But I say for me, anxiety, all of those things that so many people suffer from, it's because you feel out of control. You know, something happens in your life and you don't know the answer, but all of a sudden someone says, oh, blah, 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 and you know how to deal with something. You're like, oh, okay, I can do this, no problem, it's fine. The anxiety, the worry disappears. And it's like the bigger picture of who we are. You know, all those emotions, all those ups, downs, and mixed messages, and the emotional roller coaster we put ourselves through. It's all down to us being disconnected from the truth of who we are and the magnificence of who we are and the part we are within this huge universe, you know, of infinite possibilities. That's who we are, you know.
And on that note, I invite you to talk about your announcement right now.
My announcement. Some people might have seen it already because I have started to mention it. But my book, Don't Wait for the World to Get Better. It's a journey from uncertainty to profound freedom and happiness. And in this book, you know, one of the reasons I wrote this book was because through all this journey and what we've spoken about, the voice in your head, my illness, all the experiences I had, everything that I was trying to find answers to, the research I was doing, all of it, what I found was that I could find books on consciousness, books on this, books on that, related to personal development, spirituality. I couldn't find a book that didn't talk about parts of the whole. I couldn't. So I read so many books and did so much investigating and research. But I couldn't find anything that tied it all together in this beautiful kind of line that just links everything together of understanding, this beautiful line of understanding that starts from, you know, you are creation up to, you know, death and everything that happens in between, like the life challenges, the voice in your head, illness, hereditary illness, and talk just so many different aspects, how to understand that. And those 5 questions that I mentioned earlier, who are we? Where do we come from? Why are we here? What on earth is going on? Where are we going next? I needed something that's linked all that, because you can't have one bit without having the other bit, because they all link together so beautifully. So I wrote a book. That's what I did, because I just wanted to bring all of this together in a down-to-earth way, because like we were saying, it can be the spiritual, personal development world can have so many different aspects and parts of the puzzle. I wanted to bring everything together that I could to give people the solid foundation to place everything else they want to do on top of that, because then they know who they are, why they're here, no fear of death, they know where they're going next, they know what they're capable of, all of those things in a really down-to-earth way. And that is the book. So the pre-register is there, and it's open on Divine Royalty on my website. And anyone who pre-registers, they'll know as soon as it's ready, and also there'll be a really, really amazing offer that goes out on it as well. But this book has been written from the heart completely. It's the information is in there because I've really walked the walk, and I say in there, a nice mountain retreat, sitting up on mountain retreat, meditating, trying to work it out, would have been heavenly. It was never going to be. I had to walk the walk in order to share from a place of authenticity, really, so people know that it's down to earth, and I've really kind of, I've been there and experienced it and shared so many people's journeys, which has helped me as well. So it takes you from start to finish, no gaps in between, and that is the foundation that we place everything else on, because we've got such a there's such an amazing uprising in people wanting to learn more spiritual stuff, mastering mindset, all of this. But the thing is that's really important is it's not about fixing who you've become. And that's the most important thing I could say. It's not about, you self-sabotaging, all these things, it's not about fixing that first. All those things, all the therapies you can do, everything, is so, so important. And I support all those supportive therapies, but it's so important to understand who you really are first. And then anything else that you want to work on, master your mindset, self-sabotage, whatever, you're setting on a solid foundation of understanding of who you are. And then you can have so much more success and joy and fulfillment in your life with that foundation in place. And that's what that book is for me. It's the foundation of understanding of all those questions and why we're here. But thank you for letting me share. And you also, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. Stella is saying, I love the name of your book.
Oh, thank you, Stella. I think it's
also,
at the moment.
Also, when you were explaining what the voice in your head was for you and what's underneath, Stella was also saying that you explained it beautifully and that everything starts from within, from understanding who we are. Mm. And then I also said that awareness is such a beautiful gift that we can give to ourselves. Mm. And I think that your book is going to be catalytic for so many people. And again, down to earth, because it's also, comes from your story. So it's not just words that you're saying. You've experienced all those things, and therefore you'll carry that energy of someone who's been there, done that, and you can understand. And I also feel like I really like your why. I like that you did all that research and read so many books, and you're like, this thing is missing. When am I going to do this? I'll create something. Because so many people just, complain that it isn't, and you're like, okay, so I'm just going to create the thing that is missing. And now you have this amazing thing that you can share with the world and help so many people remember and ask those questions. So I'm so proud of you. And it's an honor to know you and know the person behind the book.
Likewise, thank you. And you've got some amazing things going on right now as well. This is not all about me. Share. Yeah, share.
Yeah, so for me, that voice in your head was a big weight on me as well throughout my life. I spent most of my life people pleasing, and being and doing what I thought I had to in order to be, accepted, in order to belong. And one big thing that happened for me was that my self-expression was blocked. It's not just the words that would get locked in my throat, and I spent such a big portion in my life constantly with sore throats, with infections constantly that would take the longest time to go away, especially when I was in Portugal. And it's like I couldn't speak my truth. And sometimes I didn't even have access to it because it was so suppressed and trapped underneath. So that voice was strong. That protection was very, very strong. And when I was a child, my mother used to find me in the playground at school, surrounded by my classmates, and I had this open book. Before I learned how to write or read, I would be apparently I was a storyteller. I was inventing a story and telling it to my classmates. I completely forgot about this. I only discovered that in 2019.
Right.
Exactly in the second time when I started asking those questions. And I started going into meditation to heal my inner child, connecting with my subconscious mind, doing forgiveness work. Ho'oponopono was my big first. And I started getting this voice that was not the usual. It was very subtle, this nudge saying, write. Suddenly I wanted to write something. And I thought, there you go again. Another thing that is showing up. It was engineering, then it's makeup, then it's special effects, and then there you go again. Fine, I will write something. And so what I did was, when I was in inner turmoil, as I was doing the forgiveness work with Ho'oponopono, I would channel that out. So I was feeling everything as I did the method, and I was writing. And suddenly, everything I wrote felt complete. It's like I started writing short stories. And then I thought, interesting, because when I would read it to someone, I think, oh my God, that's like a finished piece. How did you do that? I thought, how strange that this showed up out of nowhere. And this is when my mother told me that I used to do that as a child.
Wow.
And then I keep writing, right? And I start writing more and more, and I'm thinking, maybe I can write a book. So I come up with a name, and the concept of the book, and I have the main characters laid out. When I go and start my journey with my spiritual mentor, you won't believe what happens. She starts having visions of me doing exactly the things that one of the main characters was doing. So I was actually in premonition, writing about a future I had no clue I would have. And in that book, I was writing about a lady who would create these evenings, weekly evenings, where women would come together and, travel to the past, past lives, whatever it was, and the healing that would happen and the impact in the present moment. And I never thought I was that one. I thought I was other one was inspired by me. And when she said all those things, it was exactly how I had written in the book.
Wow.
And at that time I thought, and this was 2020, and I thought,
Oh, okay.
how am I, if that is me, I have no clue how am I going to get there. I hadn't even started my business at that point, and I was in denial of doing the work I'm doing now. Fast forward to right now, when I'm about to open my membership Seasons of the Rose Academy, where I'm doing just that. I'm helping people bring more of who they are into their lives. I know that I'm meant to show them how to not be afraid of themselves and channel their inner turmoil, their inspiration, all of it through art in order to move towards freedom. Again, I had no clue how I was going to do this. I had several visions about me doing that and helping people retrieve the spark of the inner child that had been suppressed. I had no clue how. I was like, okay, eventually I'll get there. How? I don't know. So I was just in question, again, those questions. And now is the moment, because I'm also about to start a post-graduation in art therapy. And so basically it's the middle point of everything I've ever done. You know, the sculpting the creatures, the makeup artistry, even the engineering that I bring to my business so often. And my thesis was actually about the synchronicity in the brain and how that could connect with things such as Parkinson's and all of that. But the point is, everything has been all very well structured, even though at many times it didn't make any sense.
Yep.
It actually makes complete sense. And it leads me to this membership where I'm doing exactly what I always wanted to have. You know, I always wanted to have a space where people could express themselves and know that it's enough, because it's so tiring when an aspect of the voice in my head was the perfectionism.
Yeah.
And I still remember one time when I was learning how to do a creature. I was having classes and I kept asking, how many ribs does this creature have? And I couldn't move on until I studied all the anatomy of these animals and figured out how everything made sense. And still, I was like, but how many ribs does this? And I wouldn't move forward because of that. And I was just so afraid. I wouldn't let go. I was very, very afraid of making mistakes, of freeing whatever needed to be free. And again, I brought in Ho'oponopono at that summer. And this is when I started. It's like, okay, let me just relax into this. And I then started sculpting without the constriction as much. And magic started to appear as well. And then I brought it into dance. You know, how can I listen not just to that voice in my head? How can I have access to my soul and allow it to take the wheel here? And then finding a way to bring that in. And how would my body like to move when I'm in that space? And how is that different from how I was told? I had to move and claiming that, you know?
And claiming it,
Exactly, knowing it's enough.
Yeah.
So this, I'm very passionate about this topic. As long as I think people have a space where they are allowed to connect with who they are and invite more of themselves into their life, that the healing will happen at the pace it needs to happen. I think that often people actually only need a space of allowance, because that in itself is what led us to that amnesia, and to also numb things out, suppress these voices and our intuition because someone else knew better than us, and it was safer to outsource that truth rather than operate from our center. And of course, I know that many of us, when we have that agreement where we incarnate into this body, that we kind of forget where we came from, and perhaps otherwise we wouldn't really live the human experience until this moment where we ask the questions happen. But that's what, for me, the Seasons of the Rose Academy is. And
a beautiful name. I think that really just sums it up so well. That's such a beautiful name.
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. So yeah, that's available now, isn't it, for people to?
Yeah, the doors will open to the public towards the end of this week, because I'm giving priority to the wait list to join, and people will have access to it very soon. Amazing.
And yeah, you're just bringing so much grace and love out into the world to support people, and ultimately that's what it's about, isn't it, for all of us, whatever we do. And just to add, that you was just saying about where you came from and how you didn't know what you were going to do, and how you ended up just creating this incredible membership and this incredible space, and all the learning and everything that you get to share now from your own experiences. And I'm just talking about this book, from someone who, I found school really difficult because I just didn't get it. I didn't understand why I was there. I left school. I don't know if I even had any qualifications. And sometimes people say to me, oh, I thought you're quite well educated. Well, it's a different kind of education, it's a totally different kind of education that I've got as I've gone through life. But the thing is, I think that if you've got some kind of inkling, some kind of calling, or something's uncomfortable and you feel you should perhaps be going in a different direction, or whatever that might be, I'm just a regular girl who came from, London and Southeast London and whatever, no special gifts, I'm not, I don't know, I don't have any titles, or, I'm just me, no qualifications out of school, couldn't stand. And, I've written this book, which, has touched the people who have had access to it. It's touched them on such a deep level. So I guess we always say that is, if I can just be this girl from South London who can write this book and have answers to these questions through just living, if I can do that, and you can do what you've done, if anyone's listening right now who've got this little feeling, this calling, there must be something more, there's something, follow it, just ask, just set the intention, declare, make that declaration. Declarations are really powerful, even if you have no idea how it's going to come back, how you're going to achieve what you want to, or even if you don't even know what it is you want, some kind of declaration to say, this is, where I am, and this is whatever it is you feel you want, whatever. But yeah, so if we can do it,
exactly, anybody can do it. And we have no clue sometimes how things are going to show up, and sometimes that's a really good place to be in.
Absolutely. Not
assuming that you know everything and that you have things figured out, because you don't. And that's actually it's a place of the infinite possibilities, is when you don't place a limitation and an expectation of how something must show up. And you are in this space of, okay, I know I'm meant to do something like that, I have no idea how. I know I'll get there. And this is, I found for myself that this is the best place for manifestation, because you are detached from the outcome. You are basically saying, yeah, I know I'm going to get there. So there's no doubt here. I know. I just don't know when or how, but I'm open to discover. And and then taking the aligned action when things show up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Feel free to put here then in the comment section the link to your book when you have it.
I'll pre-register. I'll pop the pre-register in.
Awesome.
And then people will get, first notification and also access to an offer as well. So
yes, see. Yes, Stella also says that I love how you're combining everything and bringing it in your membership, Sarah.
Yeah.
This is, for me, it's like a wonderland of possibilities and
but that's what life is, isn't it? Life is just a wonderland of possibilities, and we just get so hung up on other bits that really aren't relevant. The clients that I work with, especially when they go through challenges, and the one-to-ones I work with, they go through challenges. We've got so used to just looking at this challenge, and I always say to them, it's never about the incident. It's never about the incident ever. There's always sometimes multi-layers, little aspects, and we often miss. And it's just that challenge comes in because it's trying to show us something. It's just trying to show us something, and it's trying to show us a beautiful part of ourselves that we've forgotten. So yeah, life is my most incredible honor, privilege, and it can be lived with real grace when you have that foundation of understanding and support in place, like everything you're offering people in your membership as well.
Thank you. And I want to open space for anybody who's watching live or on replay to ask questions and also share their perspectives of what the voice in your head means to you. What's your story with it? Is there any ways that you used to navigate all of this? We'll love to know your points of view and your perspectives. And also if you have any questions either for me or for Katie, just let a bit of time for that to happen. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Katie?
No, I don't think so. Just to anybody who's watching this, just don't forget your magnificence for a second. You are incredible. We're all incredible, and we're all here to support each other and not take life too seriously, I think, wherever possible. But yeah, just don't forget your divine royalty for a second.
Oh, let me see. Yeah, so far, no questions. So I think we'll end it here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Stella and Charlotte, who participated so much and were here with us live, and to all of you who were watching as well live and those who will watch on replay. We are very grateful. And Stella is saying, thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Katie, for joining.
For an amazing conversation. I think, we've probably got hours and days more conversations in us, but before people listening, we need to close this one. But it's been an absolute joy, and thank